Welcome back to the second episode of Stay of the Frame, Part 2. In the topic of the week, I'll be discussing the Trinity complex in the first part of this episode of Stay of the Frame. Talked about the infestation on the orbiter, the sentience as kind of a complement to the devs, because I don't always want to be talking about things that need improvement, because Warframe's a phenomenal game. That's the exact reason why I'm here. Because it's a phenomenal game, I want to talk about the things that I love about it, and also things that, yeah, I do feel could use improvement, and it's not always great to just talk about, this is what needs improvement, because then you're not really respecting what is good about the game. So, and of course the other topic was Mag and Volt, and Mag leading into this, and the thing about why I'm doing this topic is because I really thought they would come out with Mag and say, here is another hard support, finally. A lot of people on DevStream forums and comments and just on the regular forums always talking, or frequently, not always, talking about why there's no other supports to Trinity and why, other frames like Mag or Oberon or potentially Equinox, Night Form, and Inaros, can't measure up to Trinity. And Meg really got me thinking about this topic. I was just surprised, another control frame instead of a support frame. Why are we not seeing another Trinity? And the answer actually really does come from Blessing Trinity. Yes, it's a match on Draco, but the point is I'm playing as Blessing Trinity because I'm showing off how she stays off death, staves it off, and Trinity is an all-around girl, as I mentioned in the first half of the episode. She does shields, she does health, she does energy, and she does a buff. And I asked myself why no other frames in the game do this. After Mag wasn't revealed, her rework wasn't revealed to be another hard support. And the reason being is because the game would truly become Warframe if you had more than one frame that could create invincibility, that could do shields, do health, do energy, create overshields, and there were 4 or 5 of these frames, then the game wouldn't be about control effects, and there still wouldn't be these cracks in the Tenno's armor between control effects where we could go down, or time in between Blessing where enemies could do damage to us, because in between Blessing there would be other frames giving us excessive armor or debuffing enemies to the point that they wouldn't even do damage to us. It would basically become invincible frame. And I think for anybody who's put in cheat codes and gone through a game with invincibility on, you can see why this is the Trinity complex, the Trinity conundrum, where you technically cannot create another Trinity within the game because it would just become a game of somebody just shot me, whatever, and you would just accomplish objectives. You wouldn't use other abilities, you would just be invincible the entire time. And that's not fun. Even thinking about that, I wouldn't look forward to that. However, the conundrum of this is that, as I mentioned in the first episode, and I will continue to mention on many episodes to come, variety is our castle. Efficiency is the king, but the castle we want to live in within Warframe is variety. And hell, again, I'll quote the devs on this, Steve saying on DevStream 72, compared to Warcraft, you go into Warcraft and you're leveling one character, and you're leveling just their set of weapons and collecting just their set of weapons. And you want to play as another character, you have to start completely fresh. Warframe, you have a vast variety, transfer mods, transfer weapons, everybody can play with the same weapons. I'm leveling weapons here, so you won't really see me doing any damage, but the thing is, I'm invincible, so I don't even need to do damage to the enemies. Yes, you technically don't need to do damage to the enemies with control effects, but again, with control effects, there's always that small crack in the armor, whereas if Trinity was doing an invincibility technique or an ability to keep Tenno invincible, and then, say, a buffed Equinox was reducing damage across the entire map, or darn near it, reducing enemy damage to like 80% of their whole, so they're only doing 20% of their damage. And then you, say, had a buffed Inaros, and we'll come back to these buffing ideas in just a moment. Buffed Inaros, who's giving the entire team armor instead of just giving himself massive amounts of armor. You basically have a team that's invincible, and there's no need to shoot, and there's no need to do awesome Warframe powers. So again, the question is, what idea can we come up with to possibly give to DE to say, we want more variety. We don't want just Trinity. We don't want just 2 Trinities on hard mode raids. We want more. And we can actually look at hard mode raids for an answer. I think there are a couple of answers to this. And first I want to confront not nerfing. Not nerfing what should be the glaive and what will happen from there. So, with Trinity, the reason you can achieve invincibility, and you'll see me doing it here in this video, you shoot yourself in the foot. This should be apparent. There it is. This should be apparent to, I would say, any versed Tenno out there, that this was not intended by the developers. Just think about that. They did not come out on a dev stream and they were just like, check this out, guys. We've got this cool new mechanic. You're going to shoot yourself in the foot, and then you're going to be invincible. Everybody would have just been like, what the fuck? But that wasn't the case, because they didn't come out with that. It was suddenly somebody discovered that you can do this with Trinity, and the devs were nice enough not to nerf it. It was this thing kind of developed by the community. And also, part of the reason why they probably didn't nerf this was because if they nerfed glaives with the power throw exploding upon impact with an object, then they'd have to nerf explosives, because you'd shoot yourself in the foot with exploding knives, shuriken, or the Coal Star, or the Penta, and then they'd have to nerf the damage done to yourself, and then those weapons would become very, very, very powerful, because, man, those weapons are really powerful for area of effect weapons, even by comparison to Ignis Simular, that you shoot and everything dies in a large area of effect. And so that's a lot to have to nerf just to control one frame. And so it seems there has been this moment, almost 2 years, of being stuck in one powerful support. Just one support that does it all. Buffs, restores shields, restores health, gives energy. Those are awesome things, and with the Trinity players in my clan, and I play Trinity lightly, I'm not the biggest Trinity player because typically I'm just trying to call some shots on hard instances, raids, and sorties just to get the job done. And you don't really want to divide your attention as a Blessing Trinity, you just want to shoot yourself in the foot and concentrate on shooting yourself in the foot. But people want variety, they want more frames that can do support. I don't always want to see Trinities keeping us alive in the raids. I was kind of hoping for a while, I was just like, well, maybe Inaros will get a mod like EV-Trin has that allows you to buff everybody's armor instead of just your own by eating your health. But that probably won't be the case, because as we've identified here, Trinity is not someone we're just waiting on to have a sister or a brother as far as hardcore supports go. She is a problem that is preventing us from having a variety to players who like hardcore supports. And so, where do our answers for Trinity players and variety within our castle lie? I think that there are really 2 answers here that narrow into one larger answer. One, you nerf Trinity. She does not do damage to herself to receive Blessing. Somehow there is some quantifier, and I'll get to what happens after you nerf Trinity, because It's not just a nerf to Trinity, it's a buff to other frames that should be done at the same time. Trinity, and either way, I think there should be other support frames that are buffed. Trinity is basically nerfed. She can still do Blessing, and somehow Blessing, you eat your health to up the invincibility, much like Inaros. And that's the end of that with Trinity. It really, a lot of it comes down to Blessing. But then you look at other frames, so again, we're coming back to Inaros, Equinox, we could even talk about Limbo. You come back to these frames, and Limbo obviously needs a lot of work, so we're only going to barely touch on him, but with Inaros, you could have him not only giving just health, but he could also give armor, as his last ability stacks his armor. I think it should stack his armor more. It should be like 150% of his armor, because then that can transfer to frames that have less armor, and it's this buff that will make him competitive, I feel. And Trinity players within my clan who can't get on mic because they don't have the proper equipment to be here on mic with me to attest to this, feel that if Inaros gave a lot more armor and gave it to other players, then he would be that global kind of casting Trinity player that can buff and keep us alive in high-level instances, or even in an instance like this on Draco, where I decided to bring Blessing Trinity to display this. And oddly enough, immediately after the match was over, I had the one guy thanking me, saying, "Thank you, Chaos, you glorious beast, for bringing Blessing Trinity," because people love it. But it's hard to want to always play it because there's no variety. You want to just play with your frames. You want to play with all your toys. And so Inaros has that opportunity to give armor. Equinox has an opportunity to restore health while also having the ability to reduce enemy damage. She doesn't do a good job of it. I believe the last time I read the wiki, and I'll go ahead and pull it up again so that I'm not off in my information, Ember Equinox, and let's go ahead and pull up the Night Form abilities, and I believe this is the Pacify ability, or maybe I'm thinking of the Rest and Rage, and Pacify and Provoke. So in Night Form, there are basically two distances. When you get that Night Form range up to 40 meters, that only reduces damage by like 10%. So we go to maximization, power range, and the sub-aura, as it's referred to and on the wiki. Basically, they're only reduced to 10% within this sub-aura, and then only within a 10-meter radius around Equinox, called the main aura, I guess you could say, that reduces the damage, it's a debuff, the damage from enemies by what seems to be, well, it depends how you mix and match. So if you can get to maximum strength, which you can't if you're going for maximum range, but you can get near it, you can reduce enemy damage by roughly 41%. So I'm going to go ahead and replay the video, and I should have put it on loop, because I was expecting to be at my images by now. But you'll be reducing at max strength in the inner aura, 10 meters, by roughly 83.3%, and the outer aura 41.6% of damage. Not comparable to Trinity. Trinity blocks you from up to 99% of damage. So, let's consider a buff to Equinox. Damage reduction, larger than 40 meters, because Trinity, global. But it doesn't have to be all over the place. Let's say 60 to 70 meters. Very large range, but you see frames like Rhino and, not Trinity, Mirage get into that range with Blinding and Stomp. So it's not unheard of to achieve such a large range. So Equinox achieves a range of 70 meters with Pacify, and the damage reduction is 85% within the outer aura. So let's say the inner aura goes up to about 20 meters, the outer aura reducing damage by 85%. And the inner aura reduces it by 99%. Competitive with Trinity. Also, Equinox is able to restore health. And this is slightly balanced, in a way, by the fact that Equinox has to give a lot of energy to make this happen. So there will be these brief instances where you have to turn it off, pop like 4 or 5 energy restores, and then bam, again, you're back to reducing enemy damage and restoring team health if it needs to be restored, turning that team health restore on and off. Competitive, or nearly competitive. Not restoring energy, not restoring shields on either of those mentioned frames, but there are potentialities within... I don't even know if that's a word, but you guys get the meaning, I hope. And there are these potentials within these frames to be competitive if there is some kind of nerf. Let's assume the nerf doesn't happen to Trinity, so Trinity continues to love her glaives. If she didn't love her glaives, she'd love explosives and throwing them at her feet. Now, let's assume that this wasn't a nerf to Trinity, because nerf is scary. We don't like nerf as players. Devs don't like nerf because they get shit on, and we don't like to shit on the devs, or at least I don't, and my friends don't, and I feel like the community at large don't, but there is a vocal minority that will. And so, let's assume that that Trinity is not nerfed. But let's put a juxtaposition to that, and I'm going to use that scary word. The game is nerfed. What I mean by this is, what if what if there were only 2 supports allowed per team? This happens on Nightmare Mode raids, and with some of the other friends I roll with into raids, they like the idea of EV Trinity along with Blessing Trinity. 2 supports, one covering for the other, or also restoring energy. Instead, say you want to bring in an Aros instead of a Trinity. What if an Aros, through consumption, was able to restore energy as well? But you only have 2 supports, so this idea of invincibility, there are still cracks maintained in the armor, but variety is still maintained within our castle. So if we want to continue with variety, dry mouth, then we get it, because the game is still balanced to the point where it's not going to become invincible frame, where you just run in, you're invincible for a while, and you get stuff, and then you leave and go play other games because being invincible is kind of boring. Again, the idea is actually in hard mode raids where you can't bring more than 2 of the same frame, so Trinity represents this idea of there are 2 supports, 2 hardcore supports, Trinity and Trinity, one being EV, Energy Vampire, where you equip the augment and you're using the second ability. I'm not a Trinity player, so this one I feel like I want to take a pass on, where you're using energy... loading for a second. Where you're using her second ability, Energy Vampire. What's the augment called? Vampire Leech. So you're using the Vampire Leech augment, using Energy Vampire to give overshields while also restoring energy, and the other Trinity is using Blessing, 90 to 99% Blessing. It's a representation that there are technically 2 hardcore supports within the game, and there could be more, but maybe there's so that the game does not become invincible frame. You're only allowed 2 per match. Initially, I was going to argue that, well, have at it. You know, why not just buff these frames? Because as long as fail states are maintained, and you can technically maintain a fail state by not allowing too many invincible frames into the hard mode raids, that, yeah, why not just have at them? You know, let the hardcore supports out. Buff current supports. Buff Oberon if you want him to be a support. Buff Equinox Nightform, buff Limbo. Of course, Limbo just needs work. But even maintaining the failstate, maintaining the loss of atmosphere within survival, maintaining the death of defense objectives, mobile and regular defense, being invincible is still boring. Not taking damage, not being challenged is still boring. So I think whether you choose to remove Trinity's ability to do damage to herself to cause blessing, either way, what you come down on is prevent invincibility, but allow for variety. Perhaps not everybody's going to agree with me on this, because a lot of players like a freedom to playing what they want. I'm sure that in my early stages of playing the game, if I wanted to play a support and we had 2 other players playing as a support, I would have been like, well, WT fuck. And there probably wouldn't be a prompt saying, well, you can only have 2 supports because Invincible game is actually boring. But at the end of the day, I believe that the higher level community sees what I will see, or I have that hope, and sees that they want variety. I, again, play with a lot of Trinity players because I like to raid, I like to sortie, and it makes sense. You play with other control frames, you play with other assault frames. Why not have other hardcore support frames? And so, and no, I do not believe there is an argument for there are other hardcore support frames. If a team of raiders were to ask that you bring a Trinity, a Blessing Trinity, and you said, it's okay guys, I have Inaros, you would be laughed out of the lobby, probably. Because it just doesn't make sense. He cannot cover the team like Trinity can, and she is the benchmark for hardcore supports at the latest stages of the game, and really puts other supports to shame in what she can do, in her breadth of abilities. And so, yeah, I think that if some kind of nerf was done, and I think at the end of the day this comes down to a technical nerf on the game, where you nerf the game and it's just 2 supports per match, I think you would actually have a lot more happy players. Because instead of, well, it's going to be hard, so I guess we should bring a Trinity. Oh, yeah, well, I'm sick of playing Trinity. Do you want to play Trinity? Not really. If Devin were here, he always plays Trinity, but I know he's sick of Trinity, so instead you could have, oh, well, crap, I've been wanting to try my Inaros, so, or, man, Oberon just got that rework, and he is, one hell of a support now, because, his radiation transfers extra energy to your energy pool, or something cool like that. I think we would have a lot more happy players with variety as opposed to less supports on team. So, let's go ahead and switch to the ending screen. And what I can do is the whole shtick on closing out. I hope you guys appreciated the kind of introspective I had to bring on why we're not seeing other Trinity-class warframes. And hopefully, at some point, DE catches this and says to themselves, maybe as an idea, maybe we can see what the community has to think of this. Put out some kind of vote. Maybe Steve puts a poll on Twitter. Maybe some of you come out in the forums and discuss this. And hopefully this gains some kind of traction, because I would love to see, at the end of the day, more variety in the game. As I said, variety is our castle, and while we play kings as efficiency, I would love to see some of our support players really coming out with some pretty cool options. I think that, as I said, from here forward, it's going to be an episode typically every other week, unless the devs take a break, go to an event. Maybe even then I won't do multiple episodes, because Warframe isn't an ever-shifting meta. Once you reach a particular level, Metas are pretty much established. There might be small tweaks that can be changed, a bit more duration, a bit less range, a bit more range, a bit more duration. Again, this is reflected in my idea of Trinity. 90% blessing might be better than 99% blessing, because with 90% blessing, if you feel like coming out of the blessing, you might be taking too much damage, you can just hit yourself a few times and then have an in-between blessing, and you can have these in-between blessings instead of ever being susceptible to 100% damage. But outside of that, yeah, there is never really this incredibly shifting meta, so I don't want to exhaust State of the Frame. So, episode 3 will be in about 2 weeks. Probably going to be something on PvP. As I said, I am personally between updates. I'm enjoying Battleborn. I'm going to... Oh, crap, the beta's ending. I'm going to go enjoy something else. There's a lot going on with structuring the channel, figuring out little odds and ends like microphones, and starting to establish Twitters, and getting more people involved with episodes, and getting Reed and Mark to line up for sharing episodes between our different shows on Ramble-Entertainment. And yeah, that's about it. I'm going to go ahead and post this again on the forums on Friday, so again, sorry if there's something a little late. The Shadow Debt... Oh, perfect. Battleborn is ending, and Shadow Debt on console is starting. That is perfect. I don't know if I'm going to be entirely back into Warframe. Probably just going to be in brief spurts going into the release of Battleborn and waiting on Update 19. Or possibly the update before that, if Cats and Keldathane hit console before 19. And so, yeah, looking forward to more Warframe content. Looking forward to appreciating the game, because I'll have some downtime with it to appreciate other games. So, again, as I most of the time say on the end of episodes, we are a progressive channel. We're and I mean that is, and we're constructing, not like, oh, I'm a progressive guy mentality. No, we're trying to continually work and improve our quality. I'm trying to improve audio quality right now, and I'm trying to improve other qualities about the channel, as well. And so, please don't expect the highest quality of content. Please, if you appreciated what I had to offer here, like, subscribe, share. I really appreciated those of you who tuned in for the first episode of State of the Frame, watched the full thing. Please feel free to view again. Please feel free to hit that subscribe button if you feel so inclined, so that we can continue to give you great content. Either way, I'm going to keep producing the show because I enjoy it. But we'll be more inclined to create more content and create better content once we really start to establish a viewer base. So, like, subscribe, share. We're small. It means a lot more to us. Thank you. For those of you that do, and for those of you that don't, maybe next time. I've been Scott. This has been State of the Frame. I hope you enjoyed, and tune in next time.